Freddy and Juan accidentally cracked open what may be the largest buried fortune the Yukon has ever hidden. An estimated $150 million in gold locked under ice since the 1940s. What began as a risky $80,000 purchase of what everyone else called scrap metal spiraled into a discovery so explosive it triggered deleted records, quiet visits from officials, and a single gold bar that proved the rumors were real. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unpack how two miners stumbled onto a frozen treasure vault worth more than every modern gold rush cleanup combined. It all started with a rusted dredge abandoned near Dawson City, a decaying relic most locals avoided. Stories followed it everywhere: bankrupt owners, crews abandoning shifts, machines sinking without warning. People said it was cursed. Freddy wasn't buying that. He saw value where others saw failure, and almost immediately, something didn't add up. Inside the dredge's corroded interior were sealed steel chambers packed with frozen gravel, not tailings, not waste, but material deliberately locked away. Juan sampled it and nearly dropped the assay reader. Gold concentrations 10 times higher than normal Yukon ground. This wasn't accidental. Someone had hidden this on purpose. They told no one and quietly rebuilt the dredge off-grid, convinced it hadn't been abandoned. It had been shut down mid-score. While rewiring the control room, Juan uncovered a soldered-shut compartment holding old schematics marked with red annotations pointing to something called Secondary Recovery Channel X, a system that didn't exist in any official records. No registry, no archive mention, like it had been erased. The theory was chilling. During the war years, someone skimmed gold off the books and concealed it underground. Using modern sonar and ground-penetrating radar, they scanned the site and hit dense metallic returns beneath 40 feet of permafrost. Solid, concentrated mass, as if the dredge had swallowed its final jackpot and been sealed forever. Test drilling shattered every expectation, over 900 grams per ton. After triple-checking the numbers, Juan estimated the yield north of $150 million. Freddy made the call. Absolute silence. If Channel X was real, one leak would turn the Yukon upside down. That night, under red-lit floodlights, they melted through the ice as the dredge groaned back to life. Beneath the permafrost was a steel-lined corridor that shouldn't exist, sensors glitching, magnetic readings pulsing like a signal from below. When the first bucket came up, the gravel sparkled with thick veins of gold, not flakes or nuggets, but solid metallic lines embedded in black rock. Then something clanged in the hopper. A steel plate stamped SG-07, Private Vault Zone. No blueprint, no code, no historical reference matched it. By morning, they ran a 10-hour test through the restored recovery system and watched the mats glow as gold poured out, refined, smooth, almost pure. The assay confirmed 98% purity. 10 hours produced $12 million. This wasn't pay dirt, it was stored wealth. Even more disturbing were the tailings, smelting slag fused with tungsten and mercury, proof that decades earlier, this site wasn't mining gold, it was refining and hiding it on location. They hadn't just mined illegally, they'd been running a covert smelting operation, pouring their own bars and burying them beneath the ice. Freddy's expression hardened. They were laundering gold, he said under his breath. This dredge was never the operation. It was the disguise. That suspicion turned into certainty later that night when they searched what remained of the old foreman's cabin, crushed halfway under decades of snow. Behind a corroded stove panel, Freddy uncovered a fireproof metal case wrapped in oil-soaked cloth. Inside was a warped, water-damaged ledger, fragile but readable, its handwriting precise and deliberate. Page after page listed routine runs, yields, crew names, dates, until the entries abruptly shifted. A new section appeared. 14 undocumented records labeled Confidential Batch SG Series. Each listed production amounts that never appeared in any official filings. The final line ended mid-sentence, followed by a chilling note scrawled beneath it. Lockdown initiated at 11:43. All vault materials sealed under ice. After that, the pages were blank. Freddy cross-checked Yukon archives and finally found the missing piece. Northern Dominion Resources, a mining firm declared insolvent in 1949 after its final bullion shipment, vanished during transport. Government seizure followed, but none of the recovered gold ever reconciled with company records. Adjusted for modern prices, that missing shipment was worth roughly $150 million. The trench, the slag, the SG-07 vault marker, it all matched. They hadn't uncovered a lucky strike. They'd stumbled onto a deliberately hidden reserve, buried ahead of federal confiscation, and forgotten for 3/4 of a century. Freddy closed the ledger slowly. "This stopped being a mine a long time ago," he said quietly. "It's evidence." They locked the cabin, killed communications, and tried to sit with what they'd found. But the isolation only sharpened their nerves. Even the generators felt too loud. For the first time all season, Freddy slept with his revolver within reach. Just after midnight, headlights swept across the ridge above camp. Freddy killed the floodlights instantly. Through the drone's thermal camera, a black SUV moved methodically along the perimeter, unmarked, plates obscured, pausing near the fuel drums before retreating into the trees. Later review showed the headlights blink twice, deliberate, like a coded signal. Hours later, encrypted emails hit their satellite inbox. No sender, no subject, just aerial photos of their site. Some taken that same night, others from days earlier that had never been shared. Juan traced the routing. VPN chains leading back to a Vancouver holding company tied to a private equity group that once controlled the dredge lease. Someone knew, and they were waiting. Freddy shut everything down. Radios dead, phones off, generator beacon disabled. The camp became a fortress, sensors armed. Drones rotating every 3 hours. Whoever was watching didn't want publicity. They wanted possession. Juan focused on proof. Using a portable 3D sonar unit, he scanned the frozen chamber they'd breached. When the model rendered, both men froze. The cavity was perfectly structured. Reinforced steel walls, a rectangular vault floor lined with uniform metallic blocks. Not debris, not machinery, bars, 12 rows, roughly 100 each. Density readings estimated 60 pounds per unit. Freddy did the math aloud. About $150 million. The scan also revealed a collapsed access tunnel at the far end, intentionally destroyed to seal the chamber forever. "They didn't lose it," Freddy said finally. "They hid it. They planned to extract small quantities and move them off-site quietly, but the ground had other ideas. During the first prep cycle, the dredge's lower intake buckled. A violent crack tore through the hull. Water surged upward, flooding the compartment in seconds. Alarms screamed as buried diesel drums ruptured beneath the thawing ice, triggering a cascading collapse. The vault wasn't melting. It was failing. The dredge lurched. A stabilizer gave way. Part of the hull vanished into black slurry. Juan barely escaped, clawing up an iced ladder as steam hissed and the lower deck disappeared. Freddy tore open a salvage crate and found, wrapped in burlap, something solid. He pulled it free. A gold bar, heavy, unmistakable, stamped clean across its face. SG-07. Under the flashlight beam, the truth was undeniable. The SG series was real. The vault existed, and the gold had never left. Juan staggered over, soaked and shaking. "That's confirmation," he said. Freddy nodded. "And now we're visible." The drone feed cut on a final image. Two figures silhouetted against burning work lights, a dredge sinking into ice, and a single gold bar gleaming in Freddy's hands. By morning, the valley was silent. No power, no signal, just cooling metal where the dredge had gone under. They waited. No rescue came. But on the second night, the low hum of engines rolled through the fog, growing louder, closer. Freddy understood then. The silence hadn't been protection. It had been preparation. And within 72 hours of the collapse, everything around them was about to change. By midday, a line of 4 white trucks rolled down the access road. Yukon regulatory insignias stamped on their doors, engines humming in tight formation like an organized sweep. The lead inspector barely glanced at Freddy's documents before sliding over a sealed envelope marked Emergency Safety Directive, Immediate Suspension. On paper, the shutdown was justified by environmental instability and potential chemical hazards. In reality, it was a perfectly timed kill switch. Freddy read the order twice. There was no mention of the dredge, no reference to the flood, just broad legal language about permafrost compromise and contamination risk. It felt less like a warning and more like a rehearsed extraction plan. As evening settled in, the black SUV returned, this time flanked by 2 additional vehicles. One was unmarked. The other carried an insignia Freddy didn't recognize. The agents who stepped out weren't territorial officers or mining enforcement. They were federal-level, clipped earpieces in place, evidence bags already in hand. No questions were asked. A second notice was issued, declaring the entire valley a restricted remediation zone. Cameras were prohibited, drones were seized. Freddy and Juan were ordered to vacate within 48 hours or face criminal charges. Freddy kept his face unreadable. What the agents didn't know was that nearly a third of the recovered gold was already gone, smelted, boxed, and buried beneath a separate claim leased, quietly through a proxy. While the site was being catalogued, Juan slipped into the supply tent and sealed one last crate labeled Industrial Waste, Fluid Filters. Inside was concentrate from the SG-07 chamber, heavy with unseen value, disguised as nothing more than sludge. When the convoy finally cleared out, that crate rode away in the back of Freddy's flatbed, buried under tarps and legitimate scrap. The Yukon went quiet after that. No radio chatter, no local rumors. Discovery called twice asking about footage for the Lost Dredge project, then stopped entirely. Days later, a notice appeared on the production board. Project deferred. Materials unavailable. Juan accessed the network remotely and discovered the truth. 48 hours of camera data, from excavation to collapse, had vanished. Every file. Metadata replaced by corrupted strings. Even the Vancouver backups mirrored the same damage. At first, it looked like a system failure, until an editor sent Freddy a private message. Someone had purchased exclusive rights to the footage through a third-party buyer the day before it disappeared. The payment traced back to a dissolved subsidiary of the same private equity group tied to the dredge's original ownership. The footage wasn't lost. It had been erased. One fragment survived. An SD card Juan still carried in his jacket from the final night shift. The video was grainy, unsteady, but clear enough. rows of gold bars glowing under floodlights, each stamped SG07. The camera tilted up to Freddy's face, streaked with mud, eyes locked wide, then cut out as alarms echoed. That clip became the last surviving proof. Freddy duplicated it onto 3 encrypted drives, sealed them separately, and told Juan, "Not yet." One day, but not yet. Weeks passed. Snow swallowed the valley, erasing the trench entirely. Officially, the site remained closed under federal remediation. Unofficially, the dredge was dismantled and removed by contract crews with no company markings. When spring came, quiet filings appeared in the territorial registry. Multiple parcels acquired by a newly formed entity, SGX Mineral Recovery. Ownership traced to shell corporations, but the mailing address led to a familiar P.O. box Freddy had used for years. Whispers spread. Freight records out of Skagway showed discrete gold shipments heading south, each weighing between 50 and 60 pounds. The manifests carried a simple prefix, SG07A. A customs clerk leaked part of the paperwork. Destination, a private Nevada refinery known for quiet reclamation work. Publicly, Freddy and Juan denied everything. Interviews brushed it off as television exaggeration, jokes about cursed dredges, and bad luck filled the gaps. Off-camera, both men were different. Watchful, restrained, eyes tracking movement even during routine shoots. Discovery never addressed the missing footage again. The shutdown remained a single line in an internal memo. Production halted due to safety violations. Behind the scenes, signs accumulated. An archivist noticed a dormant 1940s claim number quietly reactivated. Analysts flagged unexplained capital flows into mid-tier refiners across Western Canada. And outside Whitehorse, sealed steel containers were unloaded into a warehouse leased under SGX's name, listed as tailings, but requiring 4 men to move each. Months later, Juan recorded a private clip in his workshop. Without a word, he opened a narrow crate lined with black velvet. Inside rested a single gold bar, SG07, stamped clean across its face. He placed his hand on it, let the light catch the engraving, then closed the lid. Across town, Freddy signed the final incorporation papers for SGX, its mandate listed as Heritage Mineral Reclamation. With that signature, legal control over the Dredge Valley parcels was complete. Whatever the government had tried to freeze in place was now moving quietly through channels too layered to trace. Somewhere between Dawson City and Nevada, those shipments continued, routine, anonymous, invisible. And for anyone who knew how to read the signs, the truth was unmistakable. What began as a forgotten wreck had become the foundation of something much larger. The regulators closed their files, the network aired reruns, and beneath the frozen ground where it all started, what remained of the SG07 vault still waited in darkness for the next thaw when history would surface once again. What never made the reports was what happened after the snow melted the following year. When the valley reopened to regulated traffic, survey crews sent in by the territory quietly revised their maps. Elevation markers shifted. Permafrost depth readings didn't match historical data. One technician flagged the area as geologically unstable, noting unexplained voids beneath the valley floor, voids that hadn't existed in any previous scan. The note was buried in an appendix no one outside the department ever saw. Freddy noticed it anyway. He always read the appendices. By then, SGX wasn't operating like a mining outfit. It functioned like a logistics firm. Clean, quiet, layered. No flashy equipment, no rush seasons, just controlled movement. Materials went in labeled as remediation debris. Refined product came out listed as reclaimed industrial metal. Everything legal on paper, everything invisible in practice. Juan handled verification. Freddy handled distance. They stopped working side by side, never traveled together, never appeared on the same paperwork. They learned quickly that the gold itself wasn't the danger. Attention was. The Yukon had changed too. Locals swore winters felt different around Dredge Valley. Shorter freezes, odd fog patterns, ice-breaking weeks earlier than expected. Hunters avoided the area, not out of superstition, but instinct. Machines malfunctioned there more often. Compasses drifted. Radio static spiked. Whatever had been sealed for decades had altered the ground in ways no one fully understood. Freddy suspected the vault wasn't just storage, it was pressure. Thermal, chemical, maybe even electromagnetic. Gold doesn't rust, but what surrounds it remembers heat. 6 months after incorporation, SGX received a sealed inquiry from a federal environmental oversight board requesting access to historical data related to Northern Dominion resources. The letter was polite. Too polite. Freddy didn't respond. Instead, he dissolved one shell entity and replaced it with 2 others. The inquiry never followed up. It was as if the request itself had been withdrawn by someone higher up the chain. Juan realized then that they weren't just being watched anymore, they were being avoided. The surviving SD card never left Freddy's possession. He kept it inside a Faraday-lined case, hidden behind a false panel in his workshop. Every few weeks, he checked the file integrity. The footage never degraded. The gold never lost its glow. That image, rows of stamped bars under floodlights, was leverage. Not to sell, not to release, to survive. Proof wasn't about exposure anymore, it was insurance. A year after the shutdown, Discovery aired a special titled Lost Mines of the North. The Dredge episode was missing entirely. No mention, no teaser. It was as if the story had never existed. Viewers noticed, forums speculated, threads vanished. Freddy watched the broadcast alone, volume low, lights off. Silence had become confirmation. Then came the final shift. Late one night, Juan's sensors flagged a thermal anomaly near the original vault coordinates, deep underground, well below any active thaw zone. A slow rise in temperature, consistent and directional. Something beneath the valley was moving again, not collapsing, adjusting. Freddy stared at the data and felt the same unease he'd felt the first time he saw the SG-07 stamp. Whatever had been buried wasn't finished settling. They debated extraction, one last pull, a controlled breach. But the numbers didn't justify the risk anymore. SGX was already profitable beyond reason. And some doors, once reopened, don't close cleanly. Freddy made the call to stop. Seal the remaining access points. Let the ice reclaim what it could. Gold waits. Time favors density. The final scene Juan recorded wasn't meant for anyone else, just a marker. He stood at the edge of Dredge Valley at dawn, camera fixed on the horizon as lights spilled over untouched snow. No narration, no music, just wind across frozen ground. At the very end of the clip, he spoke a single sentence, almost lost to the cold. "Some things aren't lost," he said. "They're deferred." That file never went online, and that's where this story ends, for now. Because somewhere beneath the Yukon ice, sealed by steel and forgotten paperwork, the remainder of the SG-07 vault still exists. Untouched, undisturbed, waiting. Not for miners, not for cameras, but for the next moment when history decides it's ready to surface again. So, if you ever hear about a quiet refinery receiving anonymous shipments, if you see filings under names that don't lead anywhere, if a story vanishes without explanation. Now you know why. And if you want the full truth when the next piece breaks loose, you know what to do.